Perfect.
as I've been here from the beginning.
Exactly. You know it all.
I remember, I was there. I was there when you first applied for these funds. They got approved. Well, it's not.
Ooh, don't say that. We're not gonna give you any more.
We had mistakenly not estimated it at prevailing wage because it was the town applicating.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was why it got hung up. Because when you submitted, yeah.
Yeah.
If it hadn't been for Leanne, it would be still out there.
Hopefully tonight we'll make progress. We'll see.
You want me to wait a couple of minutes for Jennifer, or Katha, do you think you can handle it independently?
I think I can.
Okay. All right, so then I will, I'll call the meeting. Yeah, if you could, please, thank you. These are already on, you said, Leanne? These are already on?
They're already on,
cool.
yeah.
All right, I'm going to call the
You'll have to tell me where to put this.
June 3rd meeting of the Sandwich Community Preservation Committee to order. It's 5:31. The first item on the agenda is public comment. We do have some members here of the public.
Thank you.
Second item, staff items, draft minutes of June 3rd for approval. Leanne sent those out beforehand.
I'll make a motion that we accept the minutes from the June 3rd, 2024 meeting as submitted.
We have a motion. We have a second to approve. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The minutes are approved unanimously. We do have a new member, Nanette Perkins, who is here to represent, should be the committee representative for the Housing Authority. She's not here, so hopefully we'll have a chance to introduce her next meeting, or she can come in the middle of this meeting and we'll find some time.
Fly in a little bit late, because
Okay.
she works, she has a job too.
Why I moved this to
But she
5:30?
probably got out of it at 5:30, 5 o'clock in Wareham, so she might be
Okay.
flying here.
And then under new business, we have a request for $165,772 under historic preservation for the purpose of cemetery preservation at Cedarville Cemetery and Old Town Burying Ground. And before we have the applicant speak on behalf of the request, I just wanted to remind the committee that this is the first time that we're testing out the new application process. We had talked about possible exceptions to that new process, and I think that there are some considerations we may have to make tonight, and we'll figure that out as we discuss the application. There was also a new application itself that we had revised accordingly, and we had talked about selection criteria that we would want to consider as part of any of the applications, so just keep that in the back of your minds as we review this application. I know we haven't had a meeting in a couple of months in an actual application, and longer than that. And then lastly, the budget, it's here in front of you. You should each have a copy of the report with the existing debt payments that we have against the fund balances. So again, just information to have at your disposal to allow you to make an informed decision. And with that, I will turn it over.
Chair, can I just, for everyone's benefit, just as a way of disclosure, I am the chair of the Sandwich Historical Commission, and will participate in the proceedings and vote for them, because I don't think there's a conflict, but I think everybody should know that I might be an advocate for this item.
And I am the Historical Commission representative to this committee, and so
I want to ask a question, and so I am trying to understand, and as I understand the rules, why do you believe there's no conflict, since you serve on it?
Well, they're both public committees. There's no potential for personal financial gain in any means, and I don't believe that you have to be completely impartial to make a decision under for this committee. So it's not like a public hearing or a court, and I have no personal interest or gain one way or the other in the outcome.
we've historically have had, have we ever had a just historically, we've not had people excuse themselves.
yeah,
I mean, we had Sandwich Glass Museum, that was a similar, they
Yeah.
came before the commission first.
So typically what happens with the Community Preservation Committee is that, five of the members are elected to serve as their liaison to another board or committee. So like we'd have someone from housing, someone from historic, someone from planning, recreation, etc. And they are to be experts about the items that come before them, as they do that on their other board. So there's no conflict as long as there's no personal gain as per open meeting law or through ethical violations. But you can serve as a advocate for the area that you serve in. It was a question we had before when I first started, and I called the CPC Coalition at the state level to ask, how exactly does that all work? Because obviously it's different for the regulatory boards. But here you can advocate for.
This one in particular seems to be especially in that category because it's not an institution that's going to, it's fencing. I think it might be different if it were going to an institution and you served on that board. I think I would be more nervous about that. But this doesn't, you're not serving in a building that's going to get, X amount of dollars or.
Well, you could take the Glass Museum, for example, and funding that we gave to them. If I was on the board of that private institution or nonprofit institution, you could argue that there might be a
Right.
conflict. This is public
Town-owned asset.
public lands,
Yeah.
public funding,
Right.
public benefit.
I think, I'm fine with you sitting and staying, don't get me wrong. The fact it's public land, public funding, and public whatever, still does not eliminate the need to discuss, is there a conflict? Actually, so, the fact that so is not the only reason, we should discuss it. The other thing is, it's your decision. We can't tell you to leave. It's solely your decision. That's how the law
She is.
And I agree, 100%. That's why I brought it up, number one. And,
Good to see you.
You said you were probably on your rushing from work.
We have not, and I guess we'll introduce you, Nanette, after the application itself, if you don't mind, because we've started on that item. Okay, but no further comment before it. I'm going to turn it over to you, Keitha.
Hi, I'm Keitha McGuire, and many years ago, Jennifer Madden and I started working on grants. Even before there was a CPA, we used state grants, which were arduous, and to do restoration of our many old burial grounds. The first one that I knew of that was done before we started this, oh my God, I think 2010, John Shaw and I worked on the first grant. Just to give you a little background for those of you who may not know all this. And in 1907, Ella Ellis Hallway was the founder of the Sandwich Historical Society, which is the holding company for the Sandwich Glass Museum. And she took Old Town, copied all the epigraphs, and plotted all the graves. And it was the first big recording that we had of that. Anyway, as Jennifer and I went along with various burial grounds, I can really today only address Cedarville because I wasn't aware that there was pot in here. Excuse me, I'm just getting over COVID, so I'm all chesty. Anyway, I wasn't aware that there was a part of the application for Old Town in this. So anyway, when we got through with 2 rounds at Cedarville, correcting the stones, part of that is to make a whole plan of all the burials and where they are and who they are. So we did 2 rounds of that, and then Jennifer said, the fence, And it is a Victorian age fence. So we interviewed many people, at least 6 different vendors. And we decided at the time, way back when, before this got kind of stuck in the muck, that the Cassidy brothers were very qualified. Now, I don't know all the steps you have to go from here, but he isn't here, but one of the members of the select board, who is a cemetery commissioner, had approached me maybe 2 years ago and like, let's do something about this, you know? It's just sitting there. And yes, we had some problems with the funding, and of course, you know, you turn the page and the price goes up. So it was that sort of thing. But the fence, I'm amazed, is still there, because some of the different vendors who came out said it was in dire condition. But rather than replace it with something that is not appropriate, we would like to restore it. I believe the oldest burial at Cedarville is 1804. So in sandwich time, it's like yesterday, you know, not like the 1663 Old Town. But it's very valuable, and there are a lot of burials in there that are not that long ago. Right now, the burial ground is full. It can only take cremated remains, to the chagrin of many people, I know that. But anyway, that's about all I can tell you. I hope we can finish this project and restore that fence, since it's so appropriate for the age of the burial ground. Do you have any questions for me?
I'll have a few, and then I'll just open it up to the rest of the committee. So the application itself, it says that the work is, you're looking for funding that would enable you to start the work next spring.
Well, whatever, yeah.
And my understanding, just talking to Leanne beforehand, is that you would like it to start sometime early spring, so you would be looking for funding from a special town meeting versus Maytown meeting.
I hadn't thought it through, to tell you the truth.
But Leanne, do you want to talk about
Yeah,
this briefly?
I can speak to that. So, did you have a meeting here?
CPC.
CPC?
Board of Health is at 6 here.
Oh my God.
Did you move your meeting to the second Monday?
It always is on the schedule.
Monday was a holiday. The first Monday was a holiday.
Well, Board of Health is on Mondays. So,
Okay.
seen it on the side. So,
Well,
we're just having a,
okay. You meet at 6?
Okay.
Okay, so we'll have
We're not
to,
going to be done by 6.
yeah, we're not going to be done by 6. We might have to put this off. There's this regulatory.
So
I just got a question, because
Yeah.
this is what bothers me. We changed this whole process for, to say, we wouldn't even be discussing projects like this until, January or whatever. And so the first one that comes in front of you, are you saying that you?
we would be discussing it regardless. We wouldn't be voting
Well,
until.
the other thing too is that, we gave, how much money did we give to, we've given money to this before.
Correct.
Well, let's not talk, let's figure out the logistics here of how we're going to get through. Hold on one second. Those are more,
But it needs to be discussed, because the thing is that.
we have to figure out whether or not we're going to be able to discuss it tonight is what we, so the options are to, I guess, I don't know what the options would be.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there was a double bucking, clearly. This is what's happened.
if there's table somewhere we can set up, we just have our presentation, we have a quick thing that we could probably do in here, because we're not taped and everything.
Okay.
Okay.
We just record, but there's literally children seating in here.
Yes.
Oh, you can take these, yeah, we can help too.
But I'm gonna interrupt you for a few minutes, because it's gonna take a second.
That's what,
Okay.
that's,
Adjourn for 5 minutes, or?
yeah, why don't we,
Is that
can
what we
we
can help?
quickly adjourn, we'll help set up and then that way we
Yeah,
can, okay,
yep,
let's
we
do
can
that.
do that.
Had any money for the fence. It was voted, but and voted at town meeting, but it got stuck.
So we're adjourned. You have to,
Yeah, let's,
you have to hold your comments until we're back.
I don't wanna get.
It doesn't matter which of the October meeting. Okay, so theoretically.
Good, how are you? We've been in there. And they used to always pump us by compressor. We used to have to go in there with the little kitty chairs and all that stuff. And the little kitty tables. Some big tables in there.
Is our dysfunction still being recorded? Whatever.
Leanne,
You know, one,
can you explain to everyone how this was
Came
all
about.
approved through town meeting and everything? We just never got any money?
Yeah.
Yes.
that's what I'm not sure Daryl understands.
Yeah.
Okay,
But
yeah.
If, Leanne, you could just, briefly talk about
Yeah,
some of the
so-
financial nuances of this one.
So the history of what happened is in 2019, Keitha and Jennifer came before the board and they asked for matching funds from the cemetery commissioners and the CPC, and it was two separate applications, one for Cedarville and one for Old Town Burying Ground. They were awarded in total through the town meeting process $68,200. At that point, it is town land, so we met with Douglas Lapp at the time and our new facilities director. And what was discovered at that point was that the original estimates did not account for prevailing wage or procurement. And part of the caveat of what the Historical Commission wanted was that the bid documents to be reviewed by a historic preservationist to make sure that they were of a certain quality so that when it did go out to bid, we wouldn't get someone to do substandard work. So all of that cost additional funding that was not included in the original request. So then the plan was to come back to the CPC, and then COVID hit in 2020, and that delayed us about a year. So then I rebroached the project again in 2021 and said, can we now go back to CPC? At that time, the town was undertaking massive capital projects. So we were doing the renovations at 100, we were building the Centre for Active Living. The facilities director was the what is the word? Not contractor, but he was the head of it because he is our chief procurement officer. So he did not have the time to be able to go out and rebid all these projects. So I've basically been waiting till a time period where his schedule has opened up now that those projects are complete, that we would be able to actually even bid this project in November if we were successful, or potentially May, which that just adds different time frames. So the request from the town end of things is that this would go before special town meeting if we could, because prevailing wage changes in January, so that would add an additional $2,500 to the project. When speaking with the contractors about this type of work, they would like to remove it and do it in spring, which means it would need to be bid in November. If it's not, it pushes us out another fiscal year to spring of 26, and that may change the cost of the project again and would change prevailing rates again. So that's just kind of where we stand at this point. So there was a lot of logistics on the town side of things because it is a town land. The town has to be the ones that goes through the bidding process. They have to be the ones that selected to do the work. So there was a lot of moving parts that had happened and occurred between 2019 and to this day when I've finally been able to bring the project back to the committee with Keitha and Jennifer and say, this is the lapse in funding now that we need in order to complete the project.
So what happened to the money that was already,
It's there. That money is there sitting in an account.
so, no, I mean, the thing is that because, like you said, the money was back there. But again, this is why I voted no to go and change the whole process. Because now already, here we go, first project that comes in front of the CPC under this new process, you're talking about, we're gonna make an exception.
I didn't say that.
It never should have changed.
We don't have to make an exception. I'm saying, we've already talked about scenarios in which we might want to make an exception, land purchases. This is just another one of those things to consider. I'm not saying that we have to make an exception. It's up for a vote, it's up to the rest of the committee.
Leanne's already explaining it, that it's almost like if we don't put it in now to get it into a special town meeting, it's gonna cost that much more. It's gonna come out of the CPC money.
Yeah.
You know, so
That's
that,
why,
that
that's
does.
why we left that door open for us, to make exceptions for this. If it
But
were,
again,
if it were on the other hand, something that was static.
You know, but if we had kept the process the way it was, it wouldn't even have been an issue. We would have just been talking about this, discussing it, and making, you know, this is why we never should have made the change. Because I said, the first case that comes, the first application that we finally had ever since, well, the Glass Museum would have probably been the last one, you know, then all of a sudden now we're going, okay, let's make an exception. It made absolutely no sense to make the change. We just left it the way it was. We could have just been discussing this and then moving forward. So that's my point. That's why I voted no.
I get what you're
And this is just, you know, cementing even more of a reason why it should have just stayed the way it was. You know, so.
Did you have something to say?
The only defense that I will make, and it's like, in a way, I don't have the pony in this race, but at the time that we made those changes, it was because there was a belief that our funding was going to become extremely limited.
Yeah.
And that we wouldn't know
Correct.
from one application to the end of the application process where we wanted the very limited funds to go. Now that I see that we're back in the flush, I don't disagree with
Last
you, Darryl.
fall,
It's the same thing. I mean,
You know what I mean?
last
I
fall,
don't
it would have been
disagree
very
with you.
difficult to justify the old process.
Well, but I mean, it's to Bob's, the same thing, I'm looking at this going, wait a minute,
Right, we're
where
back
did
in
this
the-
come from?
we're
Because,
back in the
you know,
money.
we put the, you know, Glass Museum through a ringer for the stuff that they had to try to do. I still don't even know if they got, you know, their final funding to take care of everything that they needed to. And they came here and they couldn't even get everything that, you know, that they needed.
But don't forget, we were expecting to be cleaned out.
Yes, exactly, no, that's how I, you know, then you look and you go, that's not
Those
going
were
to
that was, all those decisions were based on that.
I agree.
And I agree with you. I look at this and I go, well, wait a minute.
My comment is that $3.1 million, while it looks like a ton of money, is not a ton of money, particularly if you bring in an affordable housing project or something else to be able to
big
fund
land
that.
purchase.
It's not an enormous amount of money, to be honest with you. And to have the time and the foresight to understand what you're able to spend over the course of a year makes an awful lot of sense.
True, but to the point of what we were always told, you know, even prior to this, is that we weren't even gonna, we were lucky if we even had any money even for this year.
We were
So
told
that's
to
it's a
look
big
to
difference
fund
go from
smaller
almost like
projects.
0 to 3.1, you know, I mean, that is.
And that really was the only reason we changed the law, so to speak, was that we just thought, in fairness, we would wait till the end of the year to vote for anything, so that we would see the full picture, given limited funds, but I don't
And
think
with
we've
the
ever
CPA
spent this.
the
The
CPA
most money
percentage
we've
was
ever
cut.
given in one grant was just now to the Wing School for $2.6 million. I've ever sat on this, but we've never come anywhere near that kind of money for anything. Maybe,
George
because I wasn't here for the town hall, but
Fernandez Housing was a lot of money.
that was $300,000 for upgrades in that.
Yeah, but what about
Terrapin Ridge.
the new?
Was Terrapin Ridge another one?
Terrapin Ridge was
Yeah.
2.3,
Yeah, no, it was a big chunk.
yeah.
And to that point, we also had established that we want to spread out how we spend money. So, you know, now housing falls to the bottom of the list for a while, because now in order to balance how we fund, you know, we want, I think we've all agreed that we want it to be the three buckets to more or less be distributed evenly. So I would say historic preservation now moves to the top of the list, in a sense, given how much we've, you know, just expended on housing.
So to Darrell's point, we could talk about that as part of this process. We can just discuss the application as a group and not vote on it, or make a recommendation on it for the Board of Selectmen to consider. Or we can make an exception if we wanted to, based upon what the applicant is requesting.
Does this go back to town meeting again?
Yes, yep, so this would go, the
That's
next
why you were
step.
talking about a special town meeting.
Yeah, we would recommend it, the Board of Selectmen, if we did vote on it tonight, I guess the Board of Selectmen would vote on it in October at some point, and then it would be on the November special town meeting, or it would just, we would not vote on it tonight or make a recommendation on it tonight, we would consider this application, vet it tonight, but then make a decision with any other applications that come in January and February, depending on how many meetings we might need. So we used to make a decision as they came in. Now we're going to kind of consider
I'm
and vet them
following.
against
I'm
each
following.
other in a January or February meeting.
The only thing I would say, I served on the first CPC 100 years ago, and I know that historic preservation is one of the 3 slots. And I don't believe that we've had another application other than this one in the previous attempt for historic preservation in a long time.
Yeah, well, Glass Museum would have been.
I think we have, because we've done, there's been like the NIE.
Right, the Nye family,
There's been a number of town halls.
That's true, that's true.
Quaker Meeting House.
Quaker Meeting House was a big one.
That's right, yeah, meeting house. Yeah, so they're happening, like, it's like you said, in this time. This has been.
Arguably historic.
Yeah, I think that's what the bucket it was under was. Yeah, so there have been a few here and there. But I have just 1 or 2 questions about the application itself. I know we've talked a lot about the budget. In the Cedarville Cemetery here, it says that the cast iron gates are missing. Would part of this project be to restore those in any way, or?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Because I think they decided not to do the gates. There were gates. There's areas where there are a couple little steps, and there had been a gate.
Okay.
And I don't think so. And all along the side of Plowed Neck Road is an iron fence. It's black. It's not in keeping with the time. But
Jennifer, you can come right up and join if you want, Keitha. Yeah, we're just talking about the application now.
How, I thought you were in the Board of Health meeting.
No. I was just asking Keitha about whether or not, I saw in the application that the Cedarville Cemetery, the cast iron gates were missing, and I didn't know if this funding request included restoring those or replacing them, or, okay.
And I was just
TV out a little bit here.
And I was just explaining that along Plowed Neck Road is an iron fence of just, spokes. That was done by Ben Fleet, and it'll come to me eventually.
Jack Gilson.
Thank you, Jack
That was
Johnson.
a wild stab in the dark, but I bought it.
But so accurate.
But accurate, yeah. So we're not touching that either.
Okay.
This is just
The
for the
6A side?
Victorian fence, and I explained that we're not replacing the gates
Right,
that aren't there anymore anyway.
right.
And the only thing I want to add is that one of the things I like to consider is the activities or the outreach or the events that the applicant does to try to raise awareness or increase community engagement with the resource. And I know that, and I think, Bob, you're very much involved with this at the Old Town Burying Ground. I don't know who sponsors it, but the Haunted.
The Haunted Tour, yeah.
The Haunted Tour, I know just being a historical commission member, we get questions all the time about people trying to research their genealogy, so.
It's on the
Yeah.
historical commission. I know.
Oh, I know, Keitha.
I know all those.
And
But there is, I think it's one of those things you just don't, I mean, I'll say personally, I didn't realize how many people used them as, for some form of either personal research or supporting a town event.
Well, you know how I write those articles about every other month for Friends of Archives? Maybe I should raise awareness by dwelling on this for an article.
Why not?
There you go.
That's what we've
There
been
we go.
doing. We've been doing to raise awareness on trees and everything, because I write for that too. And, yeah, thank you for the suggestion.
And the last question, I'll turn it over to the board after this, or the committee, if anybody else has any
Jennifer's
questions.
the expert on this, so take over.
Oh, yes, I have a front row seat to it at the Historical Commission. The maintenance plan, so it says here, every 10 years, a yearly paint inspection will be performed to look for rust bleeding from seams and joints. If any is seen, a sanding and touch-up will be done or will be recommended. Do we know what the cost would be? I know it would be 10 years out theoretically, but,
I don't know.
okay. I know it's very special work that has to be done. It can't just be done by any company. It has to be somebody who specializes in sort of,
I think that we should ask the contractors that when we talk to them
Okay.
about the, if I go, I put in my calendar 10 years from now, I'm going to go out to Cedarville, I'm going to look at the fence. Like, if we notice that, I'm assuming that it's not like it all has to go back to the shop, but
Right.
that if we get the right kind of paint, which I know they've specified in there, is that work that
Be done
can be
by-
done by
yeah.
Historical Commission, by somebody from the town. I don't know the answer to that, but I think that would be worth asking.
I'll turn it over, anybody else? Jeff?
Yeah, I've got a bunch of questions. So let me start with the application. This is owned, these cemeteries are owned by the town, and they're maintained by the town, and that must fall under Public Works? And in the Public Works, do you know if in their budget, they have money set aside every year to do maintenance? You know, cut the grass, fix minor repairs, stuff
I'm
like
sure
that?
they do, yep.
Yeah, I would assume.
So we don't know for sure.
Oh,
One of the things,
Well, they have-
one of the things we always want to do is when we're making an investment, this is a little different, but if we approve money for an investment in something, we want to make sure there's maintenance money. This came up with the Glass Museum, so that down the road, all we're doing is giving them more money to fix what we already gave them to fix because it wasn't maintained. So I was just curious, what do we know about the town role, and what have they been doing to maintain it? I suspect they're painting, cutting the grass. I don't know if they're doing anything else. Do we know?
Aren't they participating in financing some of this with you?
Cemetery commissioners, yes.
So is the cemetery commissioners the ones who then sort of sublet out whatever maintenance needs to be done on the
I don't think
graveyards
they
to,
participate in that. No.
just the
But
Public Works mows
The
them? and-
cemetery
that's-
commissioners control the trust funds. If you look in your annual town report, every one of the burial grounds has a trust fund. Some are larger than others. So historically, we have gone to the cemetery commissioners, who are 3 members of the select board on a rotating basis. And we've asked them for 10,000, 20,000 for a project. And that's sort of almost like a matching fund to CPA.
And they're participating with funding with you on this, correct?
Yes.
So.
Yeah,
I'm
and they
just
did on
wondering
the
for
graves.
For Jeff's answer.
They have on every one of our
So
projects.
can I,
Right.
you said they're participating?
They approved
They
funding
approved it.
to help pay for this
And
from
is
the
that identified in
Cedarville.
here?
Because if you look at the price, it's $222,792, but they're only asking us for $165,772.
Well,
so
that's because,
commissioners are-
no, if you take the numbers, it's their 222,792, you take off the 165,772 they're asking for, that leaves the money they already had, the 68. It's 57,020 left, and they've already spent 11,180. Those are the numbers exactly in here. So if there's more funding coming from another group, can you please share with us how much money you're getting?
Can you help me with this?
Yes.
This has been so long since we talked to the cemetery commissioners, like 2019.
January.
Yes.
And then
So
I
the-
do want to go back to my original question, which is not this one, but I'm curious now that you've brought this up, what are you getting?
So in the original appropriation, it was split 50-50 between the CPC and the cemetery commissioners. So the 68,200 is split between half is CPC and half is cemetery commissioners. So that was the 50-50 original split.
So the 68,200, which they do have,
They do have
half of it came from CPC and half of it came from
cemetery
cemetery
commissioners.
commissioners. Okay,
Correct.
so now they're asking for 165,772. Is that
Just
all
from-
coming from CPC?
Yes.
So is there anything coming from the cemetery commissioners?
Not for the new appropriation, no.
Not for, so there is no additional funds coming to you? And why didn't you go ask them for additional funds?
I'm not sure, each cemetery has its own trust fund.
That's right.
I do not know what the balance is in the
Right now.
Cedarville, the current balance in the Cedarville trust fund. That's a possibility. I just have no idea
I don't
what that
either.
amount is.
But if you have a town book hanging around, it'll tell you.
Okay, so there may be additional funds. Go ahead.
I asked. So I did go to town management and ask them, was there an opportunity where we could do something like that again? They thought at the time that the funds were quite low. There's only a handful of thousands in the one for both cemeteries there, and there's other work that probably would need to be done to headstones. So they thought at that point you should try the CPC first to see if you could get the funding from them, because it'd be such a little pot that they would have. It would never be able to match what now is needed for this work.
Okay. So I want to go back to the original question, which was around the maintenance that's done there on a regular basis. It's town-owned property, the town's doing the maintenance. And again, they're doing the minor things, and this is going to repair a bunch of things. The application, if I'm reading it correctly, says that, this is on page 1, it says the proposal has to be signed by the agency in control and requires the signature of the town manager. Now, we don't have the town manager's signature on this, and this is signed by, I believe, you, Jennifer? And are you the agency in control?
Applicant.
Yeah. So I
On
don't think
behalf
you're
of
the
Sandwich
agency in
Historical
control. So
Commission.
why is this application correct?
Yep, so typically what happens when we receive something that's on town land, it gets signed off by the town manager, Bud. There wasn't a coinciding agenda where that it could be seen by the select board prior to initiating it at this first meeting if we were going to try and make a special town meeting, because we could put this off till October if we were going to make a vote, and in the meantime it would be heard by the select board, because Bud would need their authority to sign the document before he would sign it. So town management's aware of it. It is going to go on the select board agenda. We have often run it concurrently so that the board would hear it, because it's a double-step process. They would need to vote it on the warrant as well. So we've done it this way previously, whereby the signature would occur if it was to move forward to a town meeting, but it doesn't always happen prior to the first meeting of the CPC.
Okay, I'm surprised we can do that. And I understand the process. I'm just surprised that if we have a requirement on the form that we're able to go around the requirement. You know, it's either a requirement or it's not. And I've had this discussion before with other boards. You know, it's either a requirement or not. And the fact that we take liberties concerns me at times. To the project itself, I'll start my comment, which is, from what I've read here and looked through the pricing, I don't believe you can do this project for this amount of money. There's a number of risk factors in here that haven't been accounted for. So you're going to get some money, you're going to go out for bid, and one scenario is going to come back is it's going to have more, there's going to be more money than what you asked for. So I wanted to ask a process question tonight. It may not be your question, it may be a question for Leanne. Is in that event, all the work that's proposed here comes back and they're $40,000, $50,000 short. What happens if the CPC approved it and the town approved it?
Well, so the estimate that you have is from a professional bidder. So according to our facilities director, who is our procurement officer, he said that that is pretty much on point and has been for the last 4 years for them. You always run the risk that you discussed, that the bids would come in too high. If the bids come in too high, you would have to reevaluate the project. See if there's funding.
The process is if the bid comes up too high,
Yeah.
can they downscope the project and still send the money, or do they have to come back to us with a downscoped project?
If they were to downscope the project, they would not have to come back to the CPC, but that we would have to rebid it.
So they don't have to come back to us, they still get the money, but they can use it on a less scope project.
Say if they did one point, like just did the railings and forgot the gates.
They
Yeah.
decide to do this fence instead of that one, or whatever, they have that
There is some
liberty.
leeway. There is some leeway, yeah.
They could, sorry to interrupt, but I just, point of clarification, they could bid this in two parts, because there are two parts of it, and they could add it as a deduct alternate. So they give a price for the gates at Old Town, for example, and a price for the fence, Cedarville. And then if both work out, you have the funding, you do both.
Yeah, I'm not
you can
suggesting
do-
how
you
they
can
do
do-
it.
they
What
can
I
do-
want to
they
know,
can do
however you
that.
get there,
can do that.
if there's not enough funds to do everything that's in here,
Yeah.
they do get to spend the funds on a less size scope. They don't have to come back to us.
They do not have to come back to the
Okay.
committee, no.
And,
Question, could they
they could come back for additional funding if they needed to, yeah.
The reason one of the reasons I believe it's under bid is that there's hazardous material, there's zero in here for abatement. And you're going to sandblast that fence, which has some very old paint on it, and it's actually in the estimate that it is expected that it's lead-based paint, and there will have to be abatement, but it's not included, it's an IC. So that's one of the reasons I feel that this is probably it's under bid. And I'm not challenging the company that did it, but it's clearly stated that it's lead-based paint, it's not included.
They're not doing it on site, you know.
It doesn't matter where they do it.
There
are special precautions.
They have special shop.
I know, but they
to
didn't
deal with
price
these
it.
things.
They didn't price it. I understand that.
Well, it's included in their price.
No. It doesn't matter if they take it to a special, I have a little bit background in this, so it's the only reason I'm able to read it and decipher it a little. But there is cost, because they have to dispose of it too and so forth, and they haven't priced that in here. I understand they take it to a special shop and why, it's going to be enclosed, and they'll use controlled items and controls and so forth. So I just wanted to understand what happens, because I don't think you're going to be able to do it. There's also some, not included, there's a whole list of things that aren't included I wanted to ask you about. If I could find the page. Here it is. So it says items not considered in this estimate. There's feasibility and finance costs. I don't know if there'll be any. All professional fees and insurance. I wanted to come back to the preservationists in a minute. Furnishings, fixtures, equipment, items identified in design as not in contract, and there's a number of those, as I mentioned to you, and I think you will have some of those. It says items identified in the design as by others. So do you know what you're providing them? And it says owner supplied or installed items as indicated in the estimate. So, and then they didn't put any construction contingency. That's very unusual, especially at this time for a project that has not yet been bid, not to put contingency, because there's always unexpected, always unexpected. It's usually common practice to put contingency, construction contingency, and there's none in here. So I'm not criticizing anyone. I'm just bringing to our attention that it's unlikely you're going to be able to finish this project in its entirety for what's estimated here, because I think there are a number of things missing. So you might want to keep that in mind. So you understand, but not you don't have to come back to us. It's not going to affect us in the future as we go forward. I do feel strongly you won't be able to do it. I'm curious about how we went from 68,200 to 222,792. The two things I heard and I read was prevailing wage and preservationists. Now, that's a 3+ times increase since the first time this project came here. And I don't know how much prevailing wages are going up. Have they gone up that much?
So it's the prevailing wage, it's doing the bid documents, and there's a fee to put it out to bid and the legal advertisement that comes with it. And then these PMC documents are several thousand to get the estimates each time.
But Jeff, also, the original estimate was not, that was the problem with it. It was not done at prevailing wage. They just
but it was done at a wage.
Right. They found a company that said, oh, we'll come in, we'll take the fence home and away, and we'll bring it back. And for X amount of dollars, and then the town realized, well, whoa, wait a minute, you have to show that all the hours invested in this work will be done at prevailing wage, and voila.
I know that, Bob, but we're talking 165,000 increase. I find it hard to believe that's just due
Do
to
you remember the
prevailing
road on
wages.
planning that we had to,
Yes.
we had a bond on it,
Yes.
and the cost of what it was going to be compared to what it was bonded, and it was like 3 times, the amount that the guy had actually had an estimate to get the work done for, because he'd have college kids at $15 an hour helping out on the.
It wasn't
work
only
instead of-
that. There was
But
some
I
other
mean,
things too.
as
But I
opposed
just,
to.
the only reason I'm bringing it up is just trying to understand the risk around these numbers. And I'm just finding it hard. It was 68 and it was highly underestimated because it's now 222, and is it all of a sudden going to be 250, 300? That's what I'm trying to. So, what are we going to get for the 165 that we commit? The preservationist, I couldn't find that cost in here, and that was one of the reasons it went up. Where is that cost?
So that's already been done, which, I mean,
That's in the
it's part of
11.
that 11,000, yeah. So that I had already spent from it was creating the bid documents, sending the bid documents to a historic preservationist, having them review, redline it, make changes. That goes back, and then there's been 2 PM&C estimates since.
Okay, so that 11,000 that was spent was not in the original estimate? Or was it half of that, or? The 68? I know it came from it.
It was not in the original estimate because it wasn't known that they, from what I understand is the thought process was they thought they were just selecting
Okay.
a company,
So-
and this was how much it was going to cost to do the work.
So if I look at an increase of 165,000, 11,000 of that was due to the preservationist. The rest is due to prevailing wages?
It's prevailing wage, procurement, and then the huge inflation that occurred from 2019 through COVID to now.
Okay. And you know, I would think it would be prevailing. The inflation, absolutely, you know, I can understand that. And procurement, help me understand how procurement drove the price up?
I can figure out to you how much that would cost, but that's what
What is it? What is it that it added cost?
is putting together the bid documents, and then when you send out the big documents, there's a fee associated with releasing those documents.
That wasn't included in the original bid?
They didn't realize that it even needed procurement.
Okay. So procurement was missing, no prevailing wages, and of course, there's been inflation since.
I mean, waiting how long we
And
waited.
we even on the
just kept
board,
getting
Jeff,
more
thought they
expensive.
could just find an ironworks company, take it there, have it done, and have it replaced. And then the fly in the ointment was, it's a town project, which now means we have to go back to the drawing board because it has to be done at prevailing wages, and all of these hoops have to be jumped through as opposed to two well-intended, you know, townspeople saying, we're gonna take this on and find the company and do the legwork to get it back in place. And it obviously became something much more complicated than that.
And the reason for my questioning is just to put on the table everything, the risks, the concerns, how the money, what do we think we will get done for the 165 versus what's in here? And you may get it all done, don't get me wrong. I have a little bit of background on this and just haven't read through this. I'll be surprised. I think the timeline also, I hope you hit the timeline, it might be a little tight. The last thing I had was, and I don't know if there's a way of doing this, Leanne, it's, you know, you commented about, someone comment about the, 10 years, you go check and see if the payment, and you said you'd go out there, you put it on your calendar, but I don't expect you to go out there. I expect the town, we're making this investment, I expect the town, as part of their maintenance, keeps an eye on things, and if a stone falls down, they pick it up, or if some mortar falls out, they put the mortar in. That's the minor maintenance that should occur, so that 10 years, 20 years down the road, you don't have this huge investment you have to make. And I'm still not confident that the town is taking that on. And I was asking, I don't know, Leanne, there's a way that we can send a message from this group that says, if we approve it, that, hey, we approve this, but can we get an assurance that the town is doing some kind of maintenance at the cemeteries so that these investments that are being made before and now have a long-term lasting and the dollars are beneficial and well spent? I don't know if such a thing can be done, but I would like to send something forward like that.
I think one option to do that, and we've talked about this at some of the historical commission meetings, is that the cemetery commission, I don't think, has been meeting regularly. And so maybe it's getting that commission to be, raised, no pun intended, and then have them put a little bit of pressure on DPW. I think they have to work a lot more closely. I mean, we can volunteer, we can advocate from a volunteer status, but I think it would be a lot more effective if we had a strong cemetery commission that would work closely with the DPW to do just that.
And don't take my comments, please, don't take my comments wrong. I support this in the sense that the historical aspect of it, I recently went to Quebec area of Canada in the spring with my wife because my family, back generations, we walked a dozen old cemeteries. It was phenomenal. I didn't realize emotionally how touching it was going to be to walk through cemeteries where I have relatives buried. So I support this. I want you to be successful. That's why I'm challenging the numbers, and I'm challenging the town to say, if we're going to do this, let's make sure we, we get it done and that's maintained and it goes forward. So I'm just trying to bring forward for you, really, and others, hey, here's some areas I think you want to go take another look at as we go.
Well, the best thing you've said, and the most
The
important.
best thing?
The most important thing is the maintenance of our burial grounds. We used to have a DPW man named Dick Saline. He particularly cared about burial grounds. And he therefore would watch for falling limbs on old stones, etc. Well, he retired. And as far as the town doing maintenance now, I wouldn't count on it, but to raise the awareness, as Matt said, and have the cemetery commissioners do something would be a real step forward. This is one of the oldest towns in the country, not just Cape Cod.
And I think Jennifer, I want you to kind of speak this. I'm going to put you on the spot, but I think it's on the agenda for Wednesday before our commission, but just even a broken headstone, fixing it, getting the town's
Yes.
involvement and cooperation to actually help do, there's a lot that they can and can't do that I thought it was pretty simple. You see a broken headstone, you go out there, you repair it, you put it back in the ground, but there's a lot that goes into it.
Right,
Can you just
exactly.
explain that briefly? I think
Sure, so the lead up to this project was when did we start doing this?
2015.
2010.
2015?
No, well, I started work with John Shaw in 2010.
Okay, so 2010, we started
We did Old
by-
Burial Ground.
Right, getting preservation master plans written for Old Town Burial Ground, and then using that report to do several rounds of gravestone treatment at Old Town. Then when we felt like we had Old Town, it's never done, but good enough, and the most severe stones were treated, we did the same thing at Cedarville. Had the people come, write the report, we did the gravestone treatment, and then they recommended that we do this fence.
Didn't you actually find gravestones in Sham Pond?
Yeah, they were just footstones.
Well,
so.
they weren't, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, when they lowered the water level, what we had heard that somebody had thrown gravestones in. We looked, we didn't find anything significant when the water level was low, but it was fun looking.
Yeah.
I guess it could be an effective mooring, but
People were
Right.
out there with
Yeah.
their
So
poles.
it's a big process, and it's not done. Like, we did Old Town, right? And then I was working with, do you know Michael Geiler on DPW? No,
No.
he's our new cemetery guy, so he's fantastic.
Oh,
And
I know
so-
that name, yeah, I know the name, yeah.
Okay. So he helped me recently with a gravestone replacement that happened in Old Town Burying Ground. He was fantastic. And as I was walking through there, I see a number of stones that are leaning
Yeah.
again at a dangerous angle. We should be, I say we, I mean I should be doing this process over again. So it's going to be a continual maintenance. It's not, they're not static.
Let me ask
It's
you though-
continual maintenance.
And I'm glad to hear that you have a connection to an individual within the DPW and they're responsive and so forth. That's great, and I'm not surprised to hear that. My experience with working with the town has been phenomenal, both on my own personal self and then the different boards I'm on. But you mentioned you saw a headstone tilted. Does that require a lot of extra effort, or can the town just go in and straighten it up?
No,
Yeah.
no. It's a lot of effort. It's a lot of work. There are people who specialize in this work. Those are the people we had come to do the work when we did the previous rounds
Yeah,
of
that's it.
gravestone treatment. It's not something town people or individuals should go out and try and do. Right.
So when we talk about the town relative to maintenance and, regular stuff they should be doing, I mentioned earlier, cutting the grass, it's things like that, and maybe keeping an eye on stuff and at least bringing it to your attention that this might be something that we have to go out and get a bid for, or
Right,
can the
and it
town go
works
out and get, I
both
guess the town could go out and get bids on its own, yeah, it doesn't have to come here or go to the commission. Okay, great, appreciate your time and all your questions.
there's a question
I've
that'll
got a
go
question.
around the board here.
So, Leanne, you're saying that our procurement officer feels like these are hard numbers. in spite of the
Well,
fact that there's a couple
They're
of
estimates, yeah,
okay.
never hard, but
Right.
he felt comfortable with the number he received, was
So
what
I
his
guess
response
where I'm
was,
going
yeah.
with this is based on Jeff's concerns or the things that he points out that seem to be lacking in the application. Is it possible for you to get with him to find out how much more it would be if indeed they are going to have to, for example, get rid of the waste from sandblasting lead paint or whatever, so that at maybe before we take a vote, if we're, I don't know whether we're going to make an exception or go until, the end of the term, we could, because I would, if this is a matter of $50,000 more dollars, this work's got to be done. I think everybody's, it seems, at least to me, the attitude on the board seems to be that everyone agrees the work has to be done. So, if there's holes in the estimates and you can maybe, I don't know, that's what I'm asking you, is if you think you can find out what those, added costs might be, we could, before we vote, make a sort of a flexible vote, that if indeed, it's discovered that $50,000 more dollars worth of work has to be done, I don't think it's be that much, but let's say $20,000, that we're prepared to back that up.
Yeah, I can
I think-
review it with Brian and go over some of the things that Jeff brought up. So the estimate is based off of our bid documents. So I'll go over the bid documents again with Brian to make sure that, everything that we wanted is captured within the estimate. And then, I can ask him, what does he think for a contingency? So that we could ask for the contingency and then return it to the fund if we don't need it.
Yeah, what I was gonna say, Leanne, is that, you get the document back now, and I don't know your procurement individual. My experience with them is what they would do is they would take a look at the document and they would note, as I did, a little concerned, and they can add, they just have to highlight it that, hey, this got added by the procurement person to give us a more realistic number that we think it's gonna come in. They have the authority to do that. They would never change a number that's in it.
No, yeah.
But they can add things. And the two areas I'd ask them, what is contingency? Typically it's 10 to 15%.
Yeah.
10 to 15% of contingency on, 160, that's $16,000. It's a good little chunk. It could be 20,000. That should be in here. That's pretty typical. And usually it's a procurement person that would put that on. The other area is, a lot of times the hazardous waste area is left out because, not that they don't know there's hazardous waste, it's because until you start into it, it's very difficult for a company to bid it firm. Hazardous waste is so expensive. The rules and regulations have gotten so difficult on this. That's why they avoid it a lot of times in the original bid. And they highlighted they did. But the procurement person, again, can say, okay, I'm gonna, based on what I know there, I'm gonna add 20 or 30 or 50. Because like I say, hazardous waste handling is very expensive. Even though it's gonna be taken to a qualified facility and indoors and everything, there's still additional costs, I think, that's missing. So between those two, I think you could firm up this estimate a little better. It'd probably come closer to you asking us, probably to 200,000, not 165. That's my wild guess, but it's just based on a contingency and a hazardous.
Just place that money, as you said, into the contingency, and that way, if
Exactly.
they
Yeah,
don't
the
use
procurement
it,
person
we
writes
get
it
to
below
keep
the
it, we
line.
get to get it back again.
Right.
Yeah. So it's,
Exactly.
that's.
And that's true even no matter what it is, it's going to be less, the money comes back. So.
Exactly. And that's happened with multiple projects where the project's been completed and there's been 20,000, 5,000, 4,000 left over. Goes right back into the CPA
Personally,
account.
I just don't like the idea of having to give up, like, say, the restoration of the gates at Old Town in order to finish the fencing at, and he's sitting at.
Yeah, it's a trade-off.
Cedarville. If we're gonna do this, let's just get it all done and get it done right, and
Right, and that's, I think, adding those factors, and he may see something else, or she may see something else, and I think that's important, and we'd have a better number.
I have a few questions, but there's somebody
Yeah,
else
go ahead,
on
Rich.
there.
Go ahead.
So I just, a couple of questions on the numbers. Maybe I just gone through it too fast. The total estimate from PM&C is 220,604. And your total cost is 222, so there's a delta there. And then, which is not much, but
I think that's the alternate.
I
That's,
added the
yeah.
alternate for the project starting in spring of
see, yeah,
2025.
that's the
21.
that would be
That's
the prevailing wage cost.
add,
Okay.
add alternate at the bottom, I got it, okay.
Yeah.
And just to understand how much of the CPA funding we're potentially dipping into, the 68,200 that you were originally given,
Half of which-
minus 11,180,
Minus half of that.
minus half, well, it's half of the 68.2 is being funded by the cemetery
Commission, right.
Cemetery
commissioners, yeah.
commission. So it's 165, your current ask, plus half of 68.2.
No,
No,
No, that's
68
still
is
there.
sitting there. That's
just 165. They already have
What do
it
you
in the
mean
fund.
sitting
all
there?
wrapped up. Well, it's all
I
wrapped
think
up
it's
in-
in this
It's in-
number.
yeah.
It's wrapped up in the estimate.
No? No, it,
But it's, yeah, none of that money has come out of this yet. Has it been
no,
earmarked?
I don't, that's not the way I,
The 60,
that's not my question.
Yeah.
the 68,
Yeah.
is it spoken for in this?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, yeah, it's been appropriated, it's in its own account, that's what I used to do the bid documents, but it's sitting there, so that's what
The
was
68's
minus.
not in this number. What's in this is half of it plus and boom, boom, boom. But it's all accounted for.
It's all accounted for, yeah.
Anything
That
that was
money didn't
previously
disappear.
appropriated.
Yeah,
Fund balance of 2.3 million includes
68.
68,
Yes.
or half of 68.
Well, because you're saying 68, but then you're saying 34,100 came from the, so that didn't come out of CPC.
Right.
That came out of the Cemetery Commission back in 2019. You know, that was like a while ago, and I mean, if they're not even contributing anything since then, that's a problem. And I also agree with Jeff, you know, we put this form together, we do all this work here, and then exactly how he says it says, if this is on town land, I mean, whether it's running concurrent or whatever, the town manager should be signing this, or somebody, DPW, or somebody should be signing off on this and following through. You know, we go through and we make these changes, but then we already are starting to make exceptions in terms of, you know, not following the.
I mean, that's always been on the application, that's not a change.
I'd like to understand the application before debating the process a little bit, and I think you answered my question. I have one other question. If we don't approve this tonight, do you miss the deadline for town meeting and for the schedule that you started
No.
with?
So my understanding would be that is one of several things that I think Leanne is, we've asked her to look into. So we could schedule another meeting in October.
Yep.
And then if we wanted to, vote. If not, we don't have to. But if we voted, it would enable them to have the funding. Before it would go to Board of Selectmen, they could vote on it in a late October meeting, and then it would go to town meeting.
Typically, the Board of Selectmen would sign off on the application before you take a vote on it,
Okay.
so that you would see that it was,
And you said that's on their next agenda?
yeah,
So
yeah.
when
I
we
sent
meet
it to
again,
Bud a couple weeks
this
ago.
form will, they'll have signed off.
They'll have seen it to give authority to Bud to sign off on the application. So typically, I present it to the committee, but they don't vote on it until they see the signature. Yeah.
All right, that, I think, clarifies my question. If we act on it next month, we can still get on a fall town meeting agenda to get the funding. Do you have to have the funding before you go out to bid? I think you do, no? The
But
procurement?
so the funding becomes available immediately upon a town meeting vote. So the bid documents are all ready to go.
You wait until town meeting vote?
We'd wait till we
and
get the
then
final
you-
vote, and then you could technically, turn
you put
around
out
and put
the
out to bid the next day. Yeah.
Okay, I'm done.
Okay, so that's where your article about the fencing comes in, to encourage people at town meetings to support this.
Yeah, I have a number of questions too, because I said, I already, asked about the funding for that. I mean, I think the CPC's been obviously very, to be honest, very accommodating, very generous in terms of, whenever this has come up, whether, and even for the headstones and all that there, we have contributed, money to go and fix all those, at a number of locations. So it's not like, we haven't been supportive of what's been going on. The other thing is that, you were saying that they weren't including the gates, but yet, what's confusing is in the pictures, there's gates.
Go over the other
Different
cemetery.
gate.
Yeah.
Different gates.
So we're not including the gates at Cedarville because they are missing completely and we don't know what they originally looked like. There's no photographs of them.
But they are gonna be on.
No.
That's not part of it.
Cedarville does not include gates. The gates at Old Town Burying Ground, which are also part of this, are the gates we're talking about.
On Grove Street.
Two different cemeteries, but they're both metal, historic metal restoration and cemeteries, so we put them together in the same project. But Cedarville does not include any gates, Old Town does include gates.
So that's what I mean, so there are, okay, there were gates, because I'm sorry, like when you were saying that, there were, now the other thing is that, what if, a lot of these, fencing and that, they're all, connected to stone and all of their, when some of these things, come out or whatever, there could be, some damage or whatever that, could occur when these posts and things and everything come out. So none of that has been, factored into, there's no contingencies for if there's additional, expenses required to when, these things. Because honestly, like I said, this, you've been here a number of times, looking for, to fix this. And like I said, I do remember when this happened a number of years, it goes back, a while ago. Like I said, we've, I honestly, I think I've asked a few times at meetings, through the years, what's going on with the cemetery, because nothing, we don't see any activity, and yet the money had been, appropriated, through town meeting, a number of years ago to go and do it, and yet, we didn't see, which is a little frustrating from our perspective, and I'm sure it's a pain to kind of keep track of, year after year or whatever, and then, have, something like this come up, and my other concern is that, to be honest, is similar to what's been kind of brought up before, that, there aren't really much other contingencies in case, something happens. Now, I think, yes, because I've seen them out, mowing the lawn and stuff and everything at these, but in terms of other work that gets done in there, I don't think that anything else, in terms of the DPW or whatever, does to maintain anything, in there. But that's obviously a separate project. It sounds like if they were gonna go and do, you're not looking to obviously do anything out beyond just the fencing, at least for these two locations. And,
We will want to address, certainly when we have the fences done, and maybe this ties into your concerns, is there are shrubs growing along that fence line right now, which are going to need to be cut and not, they're interfering with the fence. They're growing into the fence right now. All of that is going to need to be cut back. I don't know if there will be townspeople who are upset about that. Ooh, you can put this in your article.
Are they boxwoods?
How beautiful it's gonna look when you get the clean vista of the fence.
That could be Pandora's box, I'd rather not
to your
address.
point, we can't trim those bushes and then let them grow back into our
Right.
newly restored fence, right? So, that is maintenance that I feel confident in my relationship with Michael, that I can call him on the phone and say, Michael, those shrubs
That's
have to
wonderful.
be trimmed,
Well, it's kind of the
I think
maintenance,
that can-
it goes with, this, like you said, with the fencing and everything that's here. Because, you want that to be taken care of too, because you don't want to spend all this money taking care of these here and then have that show
Yeah.
up, a number of years, or a few years
yes,
later or
I
whatever.
think that, I am not concerned about it.
Great.
Anybody else? Okay. Well, we appreciate the request and you guys coming here tonight and explaining it and tolerating our questions. Leanne, can you give me any, and you're welcome to stay if you want, or you can leave at this point.
I'm hungry.
Go home and get some rest, Katha, too. You're recovering.
Yes, we wish it on anyone.
No.
Well, almost anyone.
Thank you again, though, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
So this time of year, what do we typically see for, I've only been here for my second year on the committee, so I'm going to ask for some historical guidance here. How many applications do we typically get in the fall?
At this late date,
At this, yeah, usually it stirs in the summer, so particularly between June and August is generally when I get my most inquiries about CPC. So typically by September, I tend to know how many applications would come before. There's always a surprise one that comes up every once in a while that I wouldn't have heard from. They just drop off, but this has been the only one that I've heard of this year.
Okay.
But that doesn't, I mean, that doesn't mean someone else isn't going to just drop
Well,
one off.
they do have a tendency sometimes to come up out
with
of
us
nowhere.
meeting in October with this, and, you know, and electing to make that exception to the
Yeah.
rule and fund it, it's still gonna be tight for them, much less somebody coming in with a brand-new application, right? Because isn't town meeting in, is it in November?
Mid-November. So, I mean, typically we see with the committee too that you generally don't make a decision within one meeting. I mean,
Right. And I
more
don't think
often
we're
than
gonna-
not, you take a few meetings to really discuss and
Yeah.
digest and make sure that it's the right move to go. And with the new process, they'll change a little bit.
So-
But the next meeting you would have would be October 7th.
Okay, so we can, I mean, anyone can make a motion whenever they want, but we can also put this on next month's meeting, and I think there's a little bit of homework to do
Yep.
with the application itself, the signature, and we talked about contingencies, and having the procurement official review this to see how accurate it is. Is there anything else that I'm forgetting that?
I'll also reach out to the DPW about maintenance and
Maintenance,
just
yeah.
see
And I don't know
what
if
that
the-
response is. Yep.
If it's, you know, our jurisdiction as as the historical commission to maybe write a letter, you know, if this gets funded and whatnot, but say, hey, if we're investing in these assets, you know, someone needs to be there on top of them, and it can't be a volunteer like Jennifer just, I mean, she's done a
I would
remarkable,
think that's what.
done a
they're-
remarkable job doing it, but I think,
I
you
would
know,
think
this
that's
should
why you
restart.
create a commission and.
Right,
commission
but
charge
I think somebody's got to, you know, I don't know if a letter from the historical commission will help, but something to be like, hey, if we're going to make a commitment to these financially,
What's the
then,
purpose of the cemetery commissions?
Well, that's what I'm saying, it's supposed to be.
I think it's
oversight of-
basically,
the
you know,
oversight of-
acting in name only, but it's not really,
Yeah, but I mean, the thing is you know, funding for what? Now they're saying, you know, that we don't have really any funding. Since 2019, I mean, you know, you know, where do they get the funding from and what, you know?
I think we voted in at town meeting, you know, it becomes like one of those line items that I think sometimes at town meeting we vote as a part of the budget that they allocate funds for the cemeteries. I think that's where they're funding.
Where they take it out of the general fund or something?
I think
it's probably one of those
right.
first few warrants that just gets, you know, or articles that gets,
Maybe
Like the SB money is this much, the, you
Yeah.
know.
yeah, they'll start saying, well, maybe you should put a little bit more money into the
I would love to put more money into all of our deferred maintenance issues in the town of Sandwich, but that's always been, you know, a problem. What day did you say in October our next meeting?
I believe it's October 7th. So it's the first Monday. I was trying to check to make sure it wasn't a holiday.
okay, is that,
Columbus Day's Monday's the Monday after that.
Okay.
yeah, I mean, I don't see any risk, only benefit here to having another meeting on this to discuss the application and have a little bit more information to make a decision, so. We missed introducing our newest member, Nanette Perkins, so if you just want to briefly introduce yourself, say hello.
Hello. Annette Perkins. I've lived in Sandwich for 25 years or so. I am also Commissioner of the Sandwich Housing Authority and have been for many, many years. My specialty is property management and development of affordable housing. That's what I do for my paying job.
Well,
And
welcome.
she's a former planning board member.
Yes. Oh my God.
Yeah, we used to serve together.
Yeah. Hi. Sorry.
Good to see you again.
Tuesday when I went on.
Any other matters?
I don't see any other, sometimes just gotta, I get closer to the mic here. No other matters, excuse me, guys.
Sorry. We're back.
Sorry.
Other matters not reasonably anticipated, there are none.
I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
Adjournment? We have a motion, we have a second. All in favor? Aye.
Thank you. And I really apologize for the miscommunication on the town side of the double booking of the space.
There's nothing to apologize for. Everything got done.
Maureen misses you. You have to stop by.
Leanne, I had a quick question for you about an earlier email that I got a couple of months ago.